The night my marriage died, my wife walked out the front door dressed like an angel. White wings, silver heels, a halo tilted in her hair. She stood in our hallway smiling at me like nothing in the world could ever touch us, and I remember thinking how strange it was that someone could look that beautiful while carrying the exact storm that was about to rip my life apart. If you had seen us that evening, you would have called us normal. Maybe even lucky. We had been married 6 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. We had a little blue house with a cracked flower pot on the porch, a golden retriever named Murphy, and the kind of routines people spend their whole lives chasing. Saturday coffee on the back deck, grocery runs on Sundays, takeout on Fridays, laundry piled up in the guest room because we kept promising each other we'd fold it later. I was 34. My name is Ryan Mercer. My wife Alyssa was 32. She worked in marketing for a local event company, and she had a laugh that used to make every room feel warmer. I'm not saying we were perfect. We weren't. No marriage. We had arguments about money, about my long hours at the construction firm, about her staying late at work too often, about when we were finally going to start trying for kids. But I believed in us. That's what makes betrayal so brutal. It doesn't just break your heart. It humiliates your memory. It reaches backward and poisons every good thing you ever trusted. That Halloween weekend started like Alyssa was invited to a big costume party thrown by one of her co-workers downtown. I was supposed to go too, but one of my project managers called that morning and told me a delivery issue at a site had turned into a full-blown mess. Half the crew couldn't move forward until I signed off on revised plans. I told Alyssa I'd try to finish in time. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't worry about it. It's just I'll go for a little while, show my face, and come back." There was nothing suspicious in her voice. No crack, no hesitation, no warning. Just a wife talking to her husband in a kitchen that still smelled like cinnamon coffee. By 6 that evening, I knew I wasn't making it. I was still at the site, boots muddy, phone buzzing, stress sitting on my shoulders like wet concrete. I called her and apologized. She answered on the second ring, already sounding dressed up, already sounding half out the door. "Ryan, it's fine," she said. "Seriously, I know you're slammed. You sure?" "Yes. I'll probably be home by midnight anyway." There are sentences that sound harmless until they turn into evidence. "I'll probably be home by midnight." That line would replay in my head from when I got home around 9:30. The house was dark except for the lamp in the living room she always left on when one of us was out. Murphy ran to the door wagging his tail, then stopped and looked past me like he expected her to be walking in too. I changed clothes, microwaved leftover pasta, and sat on the couch with my phone in my hand. I texted her at 10:07. "Hope you're having fun. Send me a pic." She replied 6 minutes later with a selfie. She was smiling, halo glowing under purple party lights, red lipstick perfect, one hand holding a plastic cup. There were people crowded behind her in masks and costumes, all blurred together. I zoomed in because that's what people do when they love someone. They study the details. They want to feel close. I noticed nothing then. No shadow in no man's hand on her waist. No clue that my marriage was already slipping into someone else's hands. I texted back, "You look gorgeous." She hearted the message. That tiny red heart felt like truth at the time. By midnight, she wasn't home. I called once. No answer. I texted, "You heading back soon?" No response. At 12:38, I called again, straight to voicemail. I told myself her phone died. I told myself the music was loud. I told myself she was saying long goodbyes and waiting for a rideshare. I told myself every lie people tell when the truth is still too ugly to let in. At 1:14 in the morning, I was still awake. At 1:52, Murphy started barking at the front window, and I sat up so fast my chest tightened. But it wasn't Alyssa. It was just headlights passing the house. At 2:27, I sent one. I'm getting worried. Please call me. Nothing. I don't know when concern became fear, and fear became anger, but somewhere around 3 in the morning, I stopped imagining car trouble and started imagining disrespect. Not cheating. Not yet. Just disrespect. The kind that says your spouse is sitting at home in the dark, checking the locks, staring at the driveway, and you don't care enough to send one honest sentence. She came home at 4:11 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was sitting in the living room with all the lights off, and the microwave clock was the only thing glowing. When the door opened, cold air slipped inside with her. She stepped in quietly, heels in one hand, wings bent, makeup smudged at the corners. She froze when she saw me sitting there. "Ryan, where were you?" Her face changed fast. Surprise first, then calculation, then irritation, like I had become the inconvenience. "My phone died," she said. "I was going to explain. You were supposed to be home by midnight. I know, it's 4 in the morning. It got late." That was her answer. It got late. Not "I'm sorry." Not "you must have been worried." Not "let me tell you what happened." Just the laziest lie a guilty person can reach for. I stood up. "Did you drink?" "A little." "Who drove you?" "A coworker." "Which coworker?" She looked away for less than a second, but it was enough. "Dana," she said. I knew Dana. Dana didn't drive. She was terrified of highways and took ride-shares everywhere. Something cold moved through me. "You're lying." Her jaw tightened. "I'm exhausted. Can we not do this right now? That line right there, that line can end a marriage as surely as any affair. Can we not do this right now? Because what it really means is, I know I've hurt you, but your pain is badly timed for me." She walked past me toward the stairs, and as she did, I caught a smell that wasn't hers. Not her perfume, not our detergent. Men's cologne. Clean, sharp, expensive. I turned around so fast my voice came out rough. "Who were you with?" She stopped on the first stair but didn't turn around. "Ryan, stop." My heart was hammering now. "Turn around and answer me." When she finally faced me, I saw it. Not guilt alone. Distance, a kind of emotional distance I had never seen in her before, like she had already stepped out of the marriage in her mind and was only deciding whether to tell me. "You're acting crazy," she said. And there it was, the second betrayal. Because cheating hurt, but being made to feel insane for noticing the smoke before you see the fire? That changes you. I didn't yell after that. I wish I could tell you I threw her out, demanded the truth, shattered the silence in one dramatic moment. That's not what happened. Real heartbreak is quieter. Real heartbreak often goes upstairs, takes off its watch, lies down next to a stranger wearing your wife's face, and stares at the ceiling until the sun comes up. The next morning, Alyssa was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She had showered. Her hair was damp. Coffee was brewing. If someone had walked in, they would have thought we were fine. That's one thing nobody tells you about betrayal. Sometimes it stands at your counter making toast. "I'm sorry I worried you," she said without looking at me. Worried you. Even then, she still wanted the crime to sound smaller than it was. I asked her one more time where she had been. She said the party had moved to an after-hours bar. I asked who she was with. She said a few coworkers. I asked why her phone was off. She said it died. I asked why she smelled like a man's cologne. She actually laughed. Laughed. There were 100 people there, Ryan. That laugh cut deeper than if she had screamed at me. Because it told me she thought I was weak enough to swallow whatever she served. I left the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and drove to a gas station 3 miles away, just so I could sit in my truck and breathe. You ever have one of those moments where your life splits in two, but nobody else can see it yet? Cars still pass. Coffee still brew. People still ask if you need a receipt. but inside you something has already died. That Monday I tried to work, I failed. I kept replaying her face, her tone, the missing hours, the smell of cologne, the dead phone, the lie about Dana. It was too many loose threads, and when too many details stop making sense, your gut starts begging your brain to catch up. At lunch, I texted Dana, "Hey, random question. Did you end up driving Alyssa home Saturday?" She replied 3 minutes later, "No lol. I left the party around 11 with Chris." Why? I read that message 10 times. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like a casual text with lol in it. My hands actually went numb. I didn't answer her. I just sat there in my office trailer staring at the screen, feeling like the floor had tilted beneath me. That night, Alyssa came home around 6:30 carrying Thai food, like she was bringing peace to a war she still refused to admit existed. "We need to move past this weird tension," she said. That sentence nearly broke me. Move past this. As if trust were some minor speed bump. As if my instincts were the real problem. I waited until the containers were on the counter. Then I looked her in the eye and said, "Dana said she didn't drive you home." All the color drained out of her face. It was fast. So fast it almost felt cruel to witness. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she crossed her arms and said, "Why are you texting my friends?" There it was again. Not truth. Not apology. Defense, redirection, a guilty person's favorite religion. "Who brought you home?" I asked. She stared at me. "Alyssa." Silence. "Alyssa, who brought you home?" Finally she said, "A guy from work." "What guy?" "Derek." I had heard the name once or twice. Derek Harlan, new account executive, mid-30s, divorced, too smooth, according to one of Alyssa's stories months earlier. The kind of man who talked like every conversation was a sales pitch. "How long?" I asked. She blinked. "What? How long has this been going on?" Her voice sharpened. "You're jumping to conclusions." I took a step back and laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You disappeared all night, lied to my face, came home at 4 in the morning smelling like another man, and now you want me to think this is nothing?" It was a mistake. There are words that split your life open. That was one of them. Not "it's not what you think." Not "nothing happened." Not It was a mistake. I felt my stomach drop so hard I had to grip the edge of the counter. Alyssa started crying then. But it felt late. Not false. Exactly. Just late. Like she was mourning consequences more than what she had done. She said they had been flirting for a few weeks. She said it never got physical before that night. She said she drank too much. She said she felt lonely. She said we had been distant. She said she didn't mean for it to happen. Do you know what's cruel about betrayal? The person who wounds you suddenly becomes an expert at explaining why they wounded you. She talked and talked while I stood there, losing the shape of my own life. She said they kissed at the party. Then they left together. Then they went back to his apartment. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was in a kitchen chair staring at the floor, while my wife confessed that she had crossed the one line I never thought she would. Every second of that confession felt like glass. I asked her if she had thought about me while she was with him. She covered her mouth and cried harder. That was answer enough. That night I slept in the guest room. Actually, that's not true. I laid in the guest room. Sleeping would have required peace, and peace had already moved out. Around 2 a.m., I got up and wandered through the house like a man at his own funeral. I looked at our wedding photo on the mantel. Her in white. Me in navy. Both of us smiling like trust was a permanent thing. I picked up the frame. I didn't throw it. I just held it and thought, who are these people? Because that is the sickest part of being cheated on. You don't only lose your spouse, you lose the version of yourself who believed in them. Over the next week, Alyssa swung between pleading and defensiveness. One moment she was crying, saying we could fix this. saying it was one terrible night, saying she would quit her job, block Derek, do counseling, anything. The next moment she was telling me we had both contributed to the distance in the marriage. That word "both" started to disgust me. Cheaters love to drag your imperfections into the room and sit them beside their betrayal as if they belong in the same chair. Were we struggling? Yes. Did I work too much? Yes. Had we drifted? Maybe. But nothing I had done forced her into another man's bed. That choice had her fingerprints on it alone. I told my older sister, Megan, before I told anyone else. She came over with grocery store muffins and the kind of fury only family can carry on your behalf. When I finished telling her everything, she looked at me and said, "Ryan, don't let her make you negotiate with what should have been non-negotiable." I still think about that sentence, because grief makes people bargain against themselves. You start saying things you never imagined. Maybe if she tells the whole truth. Maybe if it only happened once. Maybe if she quits her job. Maybe if she cries hard enough. Maybe if I become easier to love. Heartbreak is dangerous like that. It can make self-respect sound unreasonable. A few days later, Alyssa asked if we could sit down and talk without anger. That phrase almost made me laugh. As if anger were the issue. As if betrayal should be discussed like a change in weekend plans. We sat at the dining room table we bought during our second year of marriage. We had once assembled it together on the living room floor, arguing over screws and laughing when Murphy ran off with the instructions. Now we sat across from each other like attorneys. She told me she had blocked Derek. She told me she wanted to save our marriage. She told me she had made the worst mistake of her life. Then she said something I will never forget. I didn't think it would destroy everything. I looked at her for a long time before answering. Because sometimes the person who broke you reveals in one sentence how little they truly understood you. I said, "That's the problem, Alyssa. You knew it was wrong. You just didn't think the cost would fall on you." She started crying again, but by then something inside me had gone still. Not healed. Not calm. Just still. Like a house after a fire. No flames left. Only damage. I wish I could tell you there was one final lie that made my decision easy. Some hidden second affair. Some message, some dramatic proof that erased all doubt. But there wasn't. What ended my marriage wasn't just the cheating. It was the way she protected it before she confessed. It was the way she watched me worry all night and still came home ready to lie. It was the way she let me question myself before she told the truth. It was the way she said mistake when what she meant was choice. And most of all, it was the way I realized I would never again be able to look at a delayed text, a late meeting, a dead phone, a changed tone, a work party, or a girls' night without feeling my chest tighten. That's not marriage. That's emotional probation. And I refuse to live there. I met with a divorce attorney named Linda Carver the following Thursday. Walking into that office felt surreal, like I was auditioning for someone else's tragedy. The receptionist smiled and asked if I wanted water. Water, as if hydration were the missing ingredient in a collapsing life. Linda was kind but direct. Mid-50s, sharp suit, calm voice. She asked questions in neat, measured tones, while I answered with the flatness of a man who still hadn't fully caught up to his own reality. Length of marriage, assets, house, joint accounts, retirement, children. When she asked if there had been infidelity, I paused. Then I said yes. Such a small word for such a large wound. She nodded once and kept writing. By the time I left her office, the paperwork had begun. And here's something nobody tells you. Filing for divorce after betrayal doesn't feel powerful. It feels like signing documents with a broken hand. Necessary, maybe, but not triumphant. When I told Alyssa I had filed, she stared at me like I had slapped her. "Ryan, please don't do this." I said nothing. She stepped closer. We haven't even tried counseling. I looked at her and realized she still believed this was a negotiation, still believed pain could be managed like scheduling, still believed I was going to stay long enough for her remorse to become. I needed counseling because of what you did, I said. I don't need counseling to understand what you did. That was the first time she looked truly afraid. Not of losing the marriage in theory, of actually losing me. Funny how consequences finally make the truth feel real. The weeks after that were ugly in the quietest ways. Separate bedrooms, separate grocery lists, conversations reduced to bills, signatures, logistics, Murphy scratching at whichever door was closed, confused why the house suddenly felt split. She cried often. I didn't. That surprised people. But there comes a point when pain moves so deep it stops looking dramatic on the outside. I wasn't okay. I was just beyond display. One evening, about a month after I filed, Alyssa found me on the back deck just after sunset. The air was cold enough for breath to show. She wrapped a cardigan around herself and stood near the railing. I know you hate me, she said. I kept looking out at the yard. I don't hate you, I said. She waited. Then I told her the truth. I hate that I trusted you completely and you treated that like something disposable. She started crying again, quietly this time. I wish I could undo it. I nodded once. I know. And I believed her. That's what made it sadder. I believe she regretted it. I believe she hated herself for it. I believe that if she could go back to that Halloween night, she would choose differently. But consequences don't disappear just because regret arrives on time for the funeral. Some things can be regretted and still be unforgivable. The divorce took 7 months. The house was sold. The furniture was divided. There is no dignity in deciding who keeps the air fryer after a marriage dies. No poetry in changing account passwords. No romance in forwarding mail. It's paperwork over ruins. That first Halloween after the divorce, I turned off my porch light and sat inside with Murphy while neighborhood kids ran laughing through the street in superhero capes and vampire teeth. I thought I would be angry that night. Instead, I just felt older. Like grief had added years where time hadn't. A few friends tried to set me up after that. I declined for a while. Trust wasn't something I could casually reissue like a library card. It had to regrow, and regrowth is slower than people think. I started going to therapy, started running again, started cooking meals for one without feeling pathetic, started understanding that healing is not a moment, it's maintenance. It's waking up and choosing not to revisit the wound like it still owes you an explanation. Months later, I ran into Dana at a coffee shop. She hesitated before walking over. I heard about everything, she said softly. I'm really sorry, I thanked her. Then she said something I didn't know I needed to hear. You were always the good guy, Ryan. People knew that. That sentence stayed with me all day. Because betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It tries to rewrite your worth. It makes you ask what you lacked, what you missed, what you should have been to keep someone loyal. And sometimes you need another human being to look you in the face and remind you that somebody else's lack of character is not proof of your lack of value. 2 years have passed now. I live in a townhouse 15 minutes from where the old house used to be. Murphy is slower, grayer, and still insists on sleeping near the front door. I still work too much sometimes. I still catch myself stiffening when someone says, it's just a work party. Some scars don't vanish, they just stop leading the conversation. People ask if I've forgiven Alyssa. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. I just know I stopped carrying the knife she left in me. I pulled it out. I let the wound close. That's enough. And if you're wondering whether she stayed with Derek, no, that ended almost as quickly as it began. Affairs are often built in fantasy and exposed in daylight. What feels thrilling in secret tends to rot in reality. I heard she moved to another city for work. I heard she changed jobs, started over, kept mostly to herself. I don't wish her harm. But I also don't romanticize the damage. Some choices deserve to be remembered exactly as they were. A violation, a collapse, a door closed from the inside. If you've ever been betrayed, listen to me carefully. You are not hard to love because someone failed to love you correctly. You are not foolish because you trusted fully. Trust is not stupidity. Loyalty is not weakness. Seeing the best in someone is not a flaw. The flaw belongs to the person who looked at your love and still reached for deceit. The night Alyssa went to that Halloween party, she wore angel wings. That used to feel like the cruelest detail in the story. Now I think the cruelest detail was simpler. She came home and expected me not to see the truth. But I did. Eventually. Painfully. Completely I did. And that truth cost me my routines, my home, my plans, my certainty, my ability to hear certain songs without remembering the shape of that loss. But it also gave me something back. My line. My self-respect. My refusal to beg for honesty from someone who had already spent it. So yes, my wife went to a Halloween party and cheated on me. And yes, I filed for divorce. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I stopped loving her overnight. Not because I thought starting over would be easy. I filed because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from the person who taught you that your pain can be negotiated. I filed because marriage without trust is just shared housing with old memories. I filed because every signature hurt less than staying. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The scariest mask at any Halloween party isn't the one with fake blood, horns, or hollow eyes. It's the face of the person you trust most looking straight at you while hiding the truth.